The auction house, the Velcro's music. Auction house floated in the void. Between star systems, a massive station, where the galaxy's traders came to buy and sell the rarest goods. Its halls glittered with precious metals and hummed with the chatter of 1,000 species. Today something unusual was on the block. A human stood in the center of the auction floor. His name was Marcus Chen, and he looked remarkably ordinary. Average height, dark hair going gray at the temples, wearing a simple gray jumpsuit that had seen better days. He carried a single metal case no bigger than a lunchbox, and he smiled politely at the crowd of alien merchants who stared at him with everything from curiosity to contempt. Humans were still new to the galactic community. Only 30 years had passed since they'd figured out faster than light travel and stumbled into the wider universe. Most species had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Humans were the newcomers, the primitives, the ones who still used chemical rockets when everyone else had mastered gravity manipulation. The auctioneer was a Thex, a towering creature with 4 arms and skin like polished stone. She gestured at Marcus with one appendage while consulting her data pad with another. Lot 773, she announced in the universal trade language. One human-made device, class unknown, function unknown, starting bid is 10,000 credits. The crowd murmured. 10,000 was nothing. At an auction like this, some of the items here sold for billions. A Xyloth merchant raised one of his tentacles. What does it do? Marcus stepped forward. It manipulates dark matter. The murmuring stopped. Then someone laughed, then someone else. Within seconds, half the auction house was clicking, chirping, or rumbling with amusement. Dark matter was the ghost of the universe. It made up most of the mass in the galaxy, but no one could touch it, see it, or use it. For 10,000 years, the smartest minds in known space had tried to interact with dark matter. They'd all failed. It simply existed, invisible and untouchable, affecting gravity but nothing else. The idea that humans who'd barely left their own solar system a generation ago had somehow cracked a problem that stumped civilizations millions of years old was absurd. Proof demanded a Corvex trader, her scales rattling with skepticism. Show us proof or stop wasting our time. Marcus nodded. He'd expected this. He set the metal case on the auction platform and opened it carefully. Inside was a device that looked disappointingly simple. A black sphere about the size of a fist sitting in a nest of wiring and small glowing panels. I'll need volunteers, Marcus said. Anyone willing to scan this area with standard gravitational sensors. 3 different merchants stepped forward, each pulling out handheld scanner. These were common tools used for everything from mining to navigation. They measured gravity, fields, mass distribution, all the basic properties of space. The merchants scanned the area around Marcus. Their scanners showed exactly what physics said they should show. The mass of the station, the mass of the people nearby, the gentle curve of space-time that came from being near a large structure. Marcus touched a control on his device. The black sphere began to glow with a faint blue light. The merchant scanners went wild. Suddenly, according to the sensors, there was a massive object right in the center of the room. Not huge but dense. The gravitational reading spiked, showing something with the mass of a small asteroid compressed into a space barely larger than the device itself, but there was nothing. There nothing visible, nothing they could touch or detect with any other instrument. Dark matter concentration. Marcus explained calmly, the device creates a localized field that draws dark matter particles into a specific area and holds them there. Right now, there's approximately 200 tons of dark matter suspended in a 3M sphere around us. He touched another control, the scanners returned to normal, the invisible mass vanished. We can't make it visible. Marcus continued, we can't make it solid, but we can move it, we can concentrate it, we can use it to create artificial gravity wells, redirect objects in space, or shield against gravitational weapons. The auction house had gone completely silent. The ex-auctioneer recovered first. Bidding is now open, she said, her voice shaking slightly. 10,000 credits. To start, 1 million, said a voice. From the back, it was a corporate representative from the Helix Syndicate, one of the largest manufacturing consortiums in the galaxy. 5 million, countered a military procurement officer. From the Drath Empire, 10 million, said someone else. Marcus watched the numbers climb. 50 million, 100 million, 200 million. The device wasn't even the best model his team had built. It was essentially a demonstration unit, something they'd thrown together to prove the concept worked back on Earth, in a laboratory that had once been a converted warehouse in Seattle. Marcus's colleagues were building devices that could do far more, devices that could move dark matter across light years, devices that could create gravitation shields strong enough to deflect asteroid impacts, devices that might eventually allow for forms of travel and communication that the galaxy had never imagined. But Marcus didn't mention any of that. He just stood quietly watching the aliens bid against each other and smiled his polite smile. Humans had learned something important in their short time among the stars. Everyone underestimated them. Everyone assumed that because humans were new, they were primitive, backward, limited. That assumption was worth more than any device Marcus could sell. The bidding reached 500 million credits before it finally stopped. The delegation, 3 days after the auction, Marcus Chen received a visitor at his hotel suite on the Velcro station. The door chimed, and when he opened it, he found himself facing a delegation of 5 aliens, representing some of the most powerful factions in the galaxy. The leader was Ambassador Thrall, a Corvix whose bronze scales had been polished to a mirror shine. Behind her stood representatives from the Drath Empire, the Helix Syndicate, the Academic Collective, and one independent observer from the Galactic Council itself. Mr. Chen, Thrall said, her voice carefully neutral. We need to talk. Marcus had been expecting this. He gestured them inside and offered seats, though only the Academic Collective representative, a small fuzzy creature named Pip, actually sat down. The others remained standing, which Marcus recognized as a power play. How did you do it? Thrall asked, dispensing with pleasantries. How did humans solve dark matter manipulation in 30 years when we've been trying for millennia? Marcus poured himself a cup of coffee from the suite's beverage maker. We didn't solve it in 30 years, he said. We solved it in about 18 months, and we weren't really trying. The Drath military officer, a massive creature with 6 legs and armor-plated skin, made a sound like grinding rocks Explain, it was an accident, Marcus said simply. A physics graduate student named Sarah Al-Khalifa was working on her dissertation about quantum field interactions. She was running simulations on exotic particles, trying to model how they might behave under extreme conditions. One of her simulations predicted that under very specific circumstances you could create a temporary field that would interact with dark matter particles. She thought it was a bug in her code, and it wasn't, Pip said quietly from his chair. No, she built a test apparatus just to prove the simulation was wrong. Instead, she proved it was right. Marcus sipped his coffee. The funny thing is, she almost threw out the results anyway. She thought her equipment was malfunctioning because the readings didn't make sense according to the standard models we'd been taught. Thrall's scales rippled with what might have been frustration. The standard models are based on 10,000 years of research by the finest minds in the galaxy. Yes, Marcus agreed, and that's exactly the problem. He set down his coffee and walked to the suite's window, which showed the vast star field beyond the station. When we joined the galactic community, everyone was very generous. You shared your science with us, your physics, your mathematics, your understanding of how the universe works. We learned faster than light travel from you, gravity, manipulation, energy, weapons, all the fundamental technologies that every civilization uses. We welcomed you as equals. Helix Syndicate representative said. It was a being that looked like animated liquid metal. We gave you the knowledge that took us millions of years to develop, and we're grateful. Marcus said, but here's what happened. When you gave us your science, you also gave us your assumptions, your frameworks, your ways of thinking about problems, and those assumptions were based on how your species perceived the universe. He turned back to face them. Humans perceive reality differently than you do. We evolved on a planet with different conditions, different challenges. Our brains literally work in different ways. When Sarah was running her simulations, she made what you would call a mathematical error. She used a function that doesn't exist in standard physics notation, an error that somehow produced correct results. The draft officer sounded skeptical. Not an error, Pip interjected, his large eyes blinking thoughtfully. A different approach. Yes, I see it now. You weren't constrained by the conventional wisdom because you didn't fully trust it. Yet, Marcus nodded. Exactly, we learned your science, but we didn't internalize all your assumptions about what was possible and what wasn't. We were still thinking like outsiders, like newcomers who didn't know any better. Thrall stepped closer. You're saying that your ignorance was an advantage? In this case, yes, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the person who doesn't know something can't be done is the person who goes ahead and does it. There was a long silence. Marcus could see the aliens processing this, their various forms of body language suggesting different emotional states. Some seemed angry, some seemed thoughtful. The Venn representative simply rippled in a way that was impossible to interpret. The device you sold, Thrall finally said. How many more do you have? That's classified. Can you make them in large quantities? That's also classified. The draft officer took a heavy step forward. Humanity has stumbled onto something that could shift the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Dark matter. Manipulation could revolutionize. Warfare, construction, resource. Extraction, transportation, every major faction will want this technology, and many will be willing to take it by force. If necessary, Marcus met the officers. Gaze without flinching. Is that a threat? It's a warning, Thrall said, quickly shooting the officer a sharp look. Mr. Chin, you must understand the position this puts us in. The Galactic Council has maintained peace for thousands of years through carefully balanced power. If one species suddenly gains a significant technological advantage, we're aware of the implications, Marcus interrupted. We're also aware that humanity is small, relatively weak, and surrounded by civilizations that could crush us if they chose to. We're not stupid. Ambassador, we're not going to start a war we can't win. Then what will you do? Pip asked. Marcus walked back to his coffee. We're going to be very, very careful. We're going to license the technology slowly to multiple factions, making sure no one gains too much of an advantage. We're going to build relationships, establish treaties, and make ourselves useful enough that attacking us would be more costly than cooperating with us. He took another sip. And we're going to keep researching, because if we could stumble onto dark matter manipulation by accident, what else might we discover that you've missed? What other assumptions in galactic science might be wrong? The implications hung in the air like a physical weight. Thrall's scales shifted to a darker bronze, a sign of deep thought in her species. You're making yourselves indispensable. We're making ourselves partners, Marcus corrected. Humanity doesn't want to conquer the galaxy, Ambassador. We just want to survive in it, and we've learned that the best way to survive is to be more valuable alive than dead. Delegation exchanged glances. The laboratory. 6 months after the Velcro's auction, the galaxy had changed in subtle but undeniable ways. Dark matter technology hadn't flooded the market. Instead, humanity had done exactly what Marcus Chin promised. They licensed the basic technology to 5 different factions under strict agreements, ensuring that no single power could monopolize it. The devices were expensive, limited in production, and came with human technicians who supervised their use. It was a careful dance, and so far humanity was performing it flawlessly. But in a converted mining facility on Titan, one of Saturn's moons, something far more significant was happening. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo stood in front of a massive assembly that looked nothing like the simple device Marcus had sold at the auction. This machine filled an entire chamber carved into Titan's icy surface. Crystalline structures networked through superconducting cables. Quantum processors hummed with barely contained energy. At the center, suspended in a magnetic field, floated a sphere of perfectly black material that seemed to absorb all light that touched it. Status check, Sarah said into her headset. Voices responded from various stations around the chamber. The team was small, only 15 people, but each one had been carefully selected. Some were human, others were aliens who'd chosen to work with humanity rather than their own governments. Effects engineer, 2 Corvex mathematicians who'd been censored by their own academic collective for proposing theories that contradicted established doctrine. A Venn physicist who'd lost her position for asking too many uncomfortable questions. Humanity had discovered something interesting about galactic civilization. It produced brilliant misfits just like Earth did, people whose ideas didn't fit the accepted frameworks, scientists who've been pushed aside for challenging conventional wisdom. Those were they. People Sarah wanted on her team. Gravitational sensors are calibrated. Reported Gene Park, Sarah's second in command. We're reading baseline dark matter distribution throughout the chamber. Quantum field generators are stable, added Cricks, one of the Corvex mathematicians. His voice still carried traces of excitement. Back home he would have been conducting routine calculations for a minor research institution. Here he was helping push the boundaries of physics itself. Sarah pulled up the holographic display showing their target. It was a region of space, approximately 2 light-years away, an empty void between star systems. Nothing important, nothing inhabited, just empty space that happened to have a slightly higher dark matter concentration than normal. We're attempting something that's never been done before, Sarah said to her team. The devices we've been selling can manipulate dark matter locally within a few meters or maybe few kilometers. What we're trying today is different. We're going to touch dark matter across interstellar distances. She paused, looking at the faces around her, some excited, some nervous, all focused. If this works, it changes everything. If it doesn't work, we've learned something valuable and we try again. Either way, we're making history. Everyone ready? A chorus of confirmations came back. Beginning activation sequence, Sarah said. Black sphere at the center of the chamber began to pulse with that same faint blue light Marcus had demonstrated, but this was different. The light grew brighter, more intense, and the air itself seemed to thicken. With invisible pressure, the quantum processors roared to life, their calculations creating cascading fields that spread outward from the sphere. Sarah watched the readings carefully. They were generating a directed beam of exotic particles, a stream of quantum information that would travel faster than light through the dark matter substrate of spacetime itself. We're establishing resonance, Cricks announced, his voice tight with concentration. The field is propagating outward. Sarah's screen showed the beam reaching out into space, invisible to conventional sensors but clearly visible to their specialized equipment. It passed Mars in microseconds, Jupiter in heartbeats. It left the solar system entirely still, spreading outward, still maintaining coherence. 1 light-year, Gene called out. Still stable, the beam continued. It was touching dark matter particles across an impossible distance, creating a cascade effect where each particle influenced the next in a carefully controlled pattern. 1.5 light-years. Field integrity at 97%. Sarah held her breath. They'd done the math 100 times, the simulations all said this should work, but theory and reality didn't always agree, especially when you were trying something no one had ever attempted. 2 light-years, Gene said. We've reached the target coordinates. Initiating concentration protocol, Sarah commanded. The sphere pulsed brighter. Through their sensors, Sarah could see what was happening too. Light-years away, dark matter particles were being drawn together, pulled from across a vast region of space and concentrated into a specific point. An artificial gravity well was forming in the middle of nowhere, created by the invisible substance that made up most of the universe. It's working, Cricks whispered. Stars above. It's actually Working for 5 minutes, they held the field stable. They created a gravitational anomaly in empty space, strong enough that if any ship happened to pass through that region, their sensors would detect something impossible, a concentration of mass that didn't correspond to anything visible. Then Sarah gave the order to shut it down. The sphere's light faded. Quantum processors quieted. The dark matter they'd been manipulating 2 light years away dispersed back into its natural distribution, leaving no trace that anything had happened. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire team was celebrating, hugging each other, laughing with the pure joy of discovery. Sarah allowed herself a smile, but her mind was already racing ahead. If they could manipulate dark matter across interstellar distances, what else could they do? Could they create artificial gravity wells to assist space travel? Could they use dark matter as a communication medium, sending information across the galaxy instantaneously? Could they build structures in space using dark matter as the foundation? Invisible cities floating in the void. The possibilities were staggering. Dr. Okonkwo, a voice said in her headset. It was Admiral Zhang calling from Earth Space Command. We've been monitoring your test. Congratulations on the successful demonstration. Thank you, Admiral. I need you to understand something, Zhang continued, his voice serious. What you've just done, every major power in the galaxy is going to want it, and not all of them are going to ask nicely. Sarah looked at her team, at the brilliant misfits who'd helped her achieve the impossible. I understand, sir. What are your orders? Keep working, Zhang said, but be ready. The galaxy is about to get very interested in what happens on Titan.